What is up, you guys? It is Stu here. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be something that's super basic, but it's something we all have to deal with as hairstylists, and that is going to be covering grays 100%. Even though it seems like it could be something super simple, because most of the time the services are just like a root retouch, it's not as hard to apply it as it is to formulate and accurately get the right color so you can actually cover the grays 100%. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I like to do gray coverage. I have a client today and she has super stubborn gray hairs. So I'm going to walk you through the formulating for her, the application, and then what she's processing. I'm going to be going over a lot of my favorite gray coverage tips and tricks, whether it's on a blonde or brunette, my favorite color lines to use for gray coverage, and a lot more. So if you're interested in this episode of the Hairstylist Handbook, stay tuned. Starting off, we are going to start off by measuring our color. My client does have super resistant grays, so we know we are going to be needing a double pigment. A double pigment, all that means is that it's going to be an in by the level on the color tube, color bottle, whatever it is you have. The reason you need a double pigment is because gray hair, the reason it is so stubborn is because it has no pigment. So a double pigment, like an in, is going to help you freaking save the day and help you conquer actually covering the grays 100%. So what I've got here are the Shade to Q Color Gel Lacquers, and this is a permanent color because you always want to make sure you're using permanent color with gray coverage. And I've got a 4NN and a 3NN. A 4NN is going to be our main tone that we're wanting to deposit within her hair, but the 3NN is going to give us a little bit of depth. By just adding a splash of this into our formula, it's going to help the color like sink in a little bit better, I feel, and it takes a lot easier. So I'm going to start off by measuring too, because measurements with gray coverage, everything needs to be precise and accurate. The way that I like to measure, because this is how I learned in school, is off of grams instead of ounces. It just makes a lot more sense to me, and the way that I do it is 40 grams of color to 40 grams of developer, and that's going to give us a total of 80 grams, and that's going to count as one bowl. So if I need any more color, I'll mix up the exact same thing, and that's how I know how to charge my clients as well. So starting off with a 4NN, I'm going to start off with 35 grams of this. So we have 35 grams of 4NN. And then with my 3NN, I'm going to be bringing it from 35 to 40 grams, so adding 5 grams of this. Now that that's done so, I'm going to be taking 20 volume, because whenever it comes to gray coverage, you always want to make sure you're using 20 volume, because it's going to give you enough lift to open up that cuticle on the gray hair and then deposit these tones as well. We're just bringing this to equal parts. So this will be 40 grams of 20 volume. Bringing it up to 80 grams. And I'm going to save this to mix it up, just so as soon as I mix it together and the color starts to activate, we're going to be applying it right then. Another reason you're going to want to make sure that you are using 20 volume developer is because if you've ever noticed on gray hair, sometimes it can feel a little bit thicker, a little bit like coarser, and that's because the cuticle is just a little bit thicker on gray hair. Since it has no pigment, it's going to be coarse, it's going to be stubborn, and the cuticle is not going to want to open. So I have a few tricks for that while I talk to you guys whenever she is processing, but as of right now, I haven't had any trouble with just doing this color on my client, letting it process the full 45 minutes and then rinsing. So I'm going to go out to the salon and I'm going to be applying this color. I'm going to be doing a talk through so you guys can know exactly how I like to do my root retouch clients. And then I'll see you guys back here when it's time just to chit chat about all of my favorite gray coverage tips, tricks, and products. So let's go start applying. So my client for today is actually going to be the perfect example of gray coverage, because she's 100% gray, guys. So check it out. The first thing I do before I apply the color is go through with barrier cream. Now barrier cream, the one that I like to use is the FRAMAR Dye Defender, and this is basically just going to be like a protectant or like a barrier around her hairline, so the color is not going to be staining her scalp and she's not leaving with like a helmet head, because nobody wants that, and people like to go a few days between their color. The first thing I always like to do whenever it comes to gray coverage is my section or my quadrant. I'm just going to be outlining the perimeter of it. This is just going to help help me kind of get on the side those sections, so I make sure I'm covering everything 100%. As I'm working my way up from the bottom to the top, I kind of like to saturate kind of going upwards, just because I'm not going to be overlapping that color onto her neck. Even though we have that barrier cream there as our protection, it's still going to be a good way to ensure that she is not going to have any stains from this color whenever she walks out the door. So I'm going through taking really thin sections, making sure that I fully saturate each section. As you can see, sometimes I'll go upwards, and after I go through my sections, I'll cover it again by going downwards, whatever it takes to do to make sure that everything is evenly saturated, because honestly, I don't want to see any gray hairs like peekabooing me or like poking out and showing at the shampoo bowl whenever I go to rinse her. Like I was saying before to the intro to this video, gray coverage can be an easy technique to apply the color, because you're just going through with thin sections and covering the areas that are gray, but it honestly does take some skill to formulate. Whenever you're formulating for colors, you are going to want to make sure that you are going back to basic color theory and really making sure you're always using a double pigment and 20 volume. There's honestly two types of gray hair, and there's actually gray hair and then there's white hair, and white hair is always going to be a little bit more stubborn to cover or to get your color to take. The reason being is because white hair has absolutely zero no pigment, so it can be a little bit more stubborn. So I'll be going through with a technique like pre-softening the cuticle, which I'll explain while she's processing. Something else I'll do to make sure that I have 100% coverage and saturation is go through and cross-checking my work. All this means is that I'm going to be going through in different sectioning. As you saw before when I was applying the color, I was going through with straight across sections, but whenever I go to cross-check, I'm actually going to be going through at a different angle or a slight angle, or you can even go from upwards to downwards. You just want to make sure you're sectioning the hair in an opposite direction that you were sectioning when you were applying your color, so you can actually make sure that the saturation is 100% there. Now that I'm moving on to this second quadrant, I was going to show you a different way that I like to do gray coverage sometimes. Honestly, it just depends on the mood or the day. I don't have like a preferred way to do it, but the way that you also can do it is by starting at the top and then working your way down to the bottom. It's still going to be giving you that same effect of whenever you're at the bottom, the hair is going to be over directed upward, and you're going to be able to make sure you're not getting so much color on the client's skin. The next thing we want to make sure we're doing is after each quadrant, or after you've done the back, go through with a color remover wipe and just go ahead and clean up all the excess color that's on their skin. This is also going to be another way to ensure, alongside of the barrier cream, that they're not going to have any stains from the color on their skin. And as we're moving on to the front, I'm going to be doing the same thing, going through and applying that barrier cream, and then I'm going to go ahead and tackle that front section. Something that I've learned that I really like to do when it comes to gray coverage is not go straight up from the bottom of the ear to meeting the part on each side, is I like to over direct the hair backwards to the back of the head and start saturating that way. That way all the hair is going to be pushed out of their face. I'm also going to be able to make sure that I'm not missing any of those little baby gray hairs in the front, because those sometimes can be easily missed when you're going through and trying to apply color. And I'm just going to be doing the same thing where I'm going through within sections, making sure I'm saturating everything evenly and perfectly so I get 100% gray coverage. This is also, you can see right here, going to help me not get any color on the client's ear, but however, just in case some does drip down or I do have to get really close to her ear, I'm going through and making sure that I have that barrier cream applied to her ear. So if some does get on her ear, all I'll have to do is wipe it off, and I know there isn't going to be any stains. Also, something I love about over directing the hair backwards like this is whenever it's time to rinse this client, all I'm going to have to do is wet her hair. It's already pushed to the back for me, and it's going to be taking a little bit of the paint out, so I'm not getting like any color on my hands or staining my nails, because honestly, as hairstylists, we all know that it's so gross to leave the salon, and it's kind of inevitable sometimes to leave without having like brown nails. So I finished up this section. What I'm going to be going through is doing my go-to, the color remover wipe, making sure everything's nice and clean for her. And I'm gonna do the exact same thing on the other side of her head, and then I'll meet you in the back whenever she's processing to talk my favorite tips. Alright guys, so we have applied her color and she is currently processing. I took that time in between that and now to clean the color balls and clean up everywhere, and I kind of wanted to go over my favorite tips for gray coverage, but also my favorite products for gray coverage, because that can make such a big difference. So you saw me use the Redken Shades EQ color gel lacquers, and those are amazing. They're a little bit liquidy, but I feel like they have such good pigment to them and they cover gray so well. However, sometimes if you're ever doing like gray coverage as a paint between in the foils, it goes a little warm, and that's when this next color line comes into play. And these are the Joico Lumishine Youth Locks, and basically they come in a double pigment and an ash. So I have like a 3 NNA, a 6 NNA, and a 7 NNA. The NN is going to give you the double pigment and to penetrate and cover 100% of those grays, but also the ash is going to help counteract any warmth you might get from doing a paint between in the foils. The reason you get warmth whenever it comes to gray coverage in between foils is because you're using 20 volume, like I said before, but so that's giving you a little bit of lift, and then also the heat in between the foils and from the scalp is kind of incubating that color, and most of the time it goes a little warm. So if you ever have issues with your paint betweens going warm, which it happens all the time, especially in the beginning of your career, try these guys out because the NNAs will change your life. The next thing that I love to use is going to be the Goldwell Colorants Cover Plus, and this isn't 100% gray coverage, but it is up to 70%. So people have just like the 40% gray coverage or lower. I would just paint this onto their hair and it will cover like a dream. I usually only carry it in 7 NN and 6 NN because that's usually like the level my clients sit at. I feel like everyone in Utah is a natural level 6, a 7, or an 8. Like everyone has light hair around here. So these guys are going to be great. I paint between the foils with them. Sometimes what I'll do, because they don't come in an NNA, is mix the 7 NN or a 6 NN, and I'll actually just go to a Goldwell Colorants, which is what I like to tone with a lot, and take a little 7 NA and Goldwell Colorants to help counteract the warmth. Through that, mix it in, even though you're not supposed to do that, it works like a charm. So Goldwell Cover Plus, up to 70% gray coverage, and these are amazing as well. Something else I think is super important when it comes to gray coverage, because it drives me crazy. You saw me use these whenever I was actually applying the color. It's going to be a barrier cream and color removing wipes. I like to go through right after I'm done with each quadrant and kind of clean up after it. I apply the barrier cream so the color doesn't stick and it does like to their skin, and they leave here with a helmet head. Apply my color, and then after I'm going to be using color wipes to take off not only the color but also the barrier cream, so then while they're processing it doesn't stain their hair. A lot of people like to go a few days with them washing their hair, especially my client out there now. She doesn't want to have a helmet head painted on, so she loves it when I use these things. She actually said, she's like, I don't know what that stuff is you use, that gooey stuff, which is the barrier cream. She was like, but I love it so much better than what my last stylist used, because I think she said her last stylist used hand sanitizer. If you don't have a barrier cream, something like Vaseline will totally work. I've done that before. That's what we did in beauty school, but I actually use this Dye Defender by FRAMAR, and I love it. It's in a small bottle as well, so it doesn't take up that much space in my locker. And then the color wipes I like to use are the COLORTRACK Wipe Offs Hair Color Remover. Sometimes whenever it comes to gray coverage and the hair is super like resistant, what I'll do is pre-soften the cuticle, and this is something that I learned in beauty school, and I only have ever had to do it to one client. So pre-softening the cuticle is whenever you go through and apply actually just developer. So I'll put 20 volume by itself in a bowl, apply it to the gray hair, and that's going to help soften the cuticle and open it up a little bit. So then when you go to apply your color, it is like a double process, but when you apply your color, it's going to take a lot more evenly and better. So if you have someone with resistant grays, I highly suggest doing that, because it can be such an annoying thing to go ahead and do a whole color service and at the end people still have grays, because people who want gray coverage don't want to see any grays. So pre-softening the cuticle is going to be a good rule to kind of follow if their hair is super resistant and you can't get their gray coverage to stick all the way. I think that's it for now. So I always let my gray coverage clients process for 45 minutes. My rule of thumb whenever it comes to developer is if you're using 20 volume, add 15 to that, so it's going to be 35, and that's going to be how long your processing time is. I did use 20 volume, so usually I would let my color sit for 35 minutes, but for gray coverage, I always let it sit 45 minutes just in case. I want it to like quit processing 100% altogether, just to make sure that gray coverage actually takes and coats and covers the grays, because like I said, nobody wants to have gray hair who comes in for gray coverage. So what I actually do for this client is go through and cross-check my sections. about 30 minutes in. That way, if there's any spots that I didn't take or didn't cover or I missed, I'm going to be able to kind of cover them then and make sure that there is no freaking grays in the end of her hair, because I said it once, I said it 500 times, but people who get gray coverage do not want to see any grays, especially sometimes resistant grays don't take as well, so reapplying that color on top of it is going to help you make sure everything's coated, everything takes evenly, and it's just going to save your butt in the long run. I didn't get any footage of me at the shampoo bowl, but Bow Chicka Wow Wow, check this out. Her grays are 100% covered and they blend in so perfectly. As you can see, these tips and tricks really do work, so try them out for yourself. I really do hope you guys took something from this video and learned something, or just want to try one of these tricks in the salon for yourself. Alright guys, so there you have it. That's all my gray coverage tips and tricks. And I know it was something that might be a little basic, but it can be tricky like I was saying. So I hope you learned something. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Like this video, let me know in the comments down below what kind of videos you want to see in the future, or any questions you have left after this gray coverage video. Thank you so much for watching. And in the description below, you can follow me on my Instagram, or you can listen to my podcast. All of my information is in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.